Have you ever tried getting data from the web into Excel only to find yourself doing hours of mindless copying and pasting? What if I told you there's a better way to do it in just a few clicks? In this tutorial, I'll show you how to scrape web data the easy way with Power Query so that you can quickly import data and put it into a well-formatted table and then clean it up to be useful. And if you haven't used Power Query before, this video is the perfect way to get started. On the left is a website with Trustpilot reviews for my online course on Excel macros and VBA. On the right is my spreadsheet with column headings for the data I want to get. I'm going to time how long it takes to fill out a single row and speed up the footage so you don't have to wait. Let's go. Phew, that was a lot of copy and paste into just one row of data, and it took 1 minute, 1 second. Imagine if I had to do this for 100 rows or even more. It would take a very long time to put all that information into my spreadsheet, and I'd have to fix copy and paste errors too. I'm pretty sure you don't want to spend your time on this kind of stuff any more than I do. So let's see how we can use Power Query to speed things up. In level 1, we're going to do the most basic web query possible. So I'll start the stopwatch and then head into data and click on from web. And I've got this source of data here. I've copied that into the clipboard. I just paste it into this box and click OK. Now it's bringing up the connection, and just wait a while. It's going to pull up this set of tables. So it's reading the web page and it's going to show this table view. Got 7 suggested tables. This is table 1, so I'm happy with the data in here. I'm going to click on load to, and it's going to continue with the connection. So I want it in the existing worksheet as a table. I'll click OK, and it's now saying it's getting the data, and it's going to put it into a table like this, and all I'll do is change the formatting a bit, and we're done. So it took just 51 seconds to do all these rows compared to a full minute to do just one row by hand. And if there are hundreds of rows on the page, it would work just as fast. And that's the power of Power Query. And now that you've seen the speed of doing a basic web query, let me show you how to do it step by step to import data to create a table we can refresh that doesn't have the default column names like column 1, column 2, column 3, and column 4. I'm sure you'd like more descriptive names than that. In level 2, let's create a new web query using Power Query and do a few simple things to get the data into a table with helpful column headings like this. So we can access Power Query by going to the Data tab, and you'll see there are these buttons in this section called Get and Transform Data. So we could either click on a button like From Web, or you could even click on this drop down to get more options. So we're going to go to Other Sources, and you see there's an option to get from the web here. So either this button or going from Other Sources will work. I'm going to click on From Web. Now it's asking us for a URL. Let's copy the URL here, and we'll paste it into this box and click OK. It's now looking at the web page and coming up with the tables. So it's analyzed the HTML, which you can see here if you click on HTML code. So that's not very easy for us to read, but that's what Power Query is doing. It's looking through that code and it's suggesting these different tables. So if you click on a table, you can see a view of that table and you can inspect some of the other tables. And so I've done that. I looked through all these different tables, and the one I want is actually number 1. That is the most comprehensive data. Includes everything that I want from this website. So last time in level 1, we actually went and loaded to Excel, but this time we're not going to do that because I want to change the column names. We'll go and transform the data. So I'm going to click here to transform the data. And the first thing we're going to do is have a look at the left, which says what queries we have open in this workbook. So it says table 1 and table 1 brackets 2. This table 1 is actually the level 1 query that we ran, so I want to rename both of these to make it clear which one's which. To do that, I can either right click and click on rename, or I can go to query settings and change the name in properties. So let me change that to level 1. And then I'll go to click on this table, the one that we're working on for level 2, and then change this name to level 2. And now that I've changed the name, I want to add an index column on the left so that if we apply any sorting, we can always get back to this original row order because it's coded in an index column. So to do that, I'm going to click on Add Column, and then where it says Index Column, there's a drop down. If I hover over from 1, it shows this will create a new column with an index starting at 1. That's what I want to do. So I click that. And you'll notice it always puts new columns on the right. So I want to move this all the way to the left, which means I could either click and drag it. I'd have to click and drag and hold for a long time. Or I can go to Transform, and where it says Any Column, this section has a Move. So I click on that drop down, and I can move it to the beginning. I click on that, and immediately it moves the index column to the left. And now we have the row numbers, so we can go back to this original order if we want to. Now, if you're new to Power Query, I'd like to draw your attention to this Applied Steps. This lists all the steps we've applied in order of applying them. Note that there is no undo button in Power Query, so instead of an undo button, what we can do is use this Applied Steps pane to delete any steps we don't want using this red X that pops up next to each of these steps. We can also edit if we see this cog wheel on the right, and we can drag steps to reorder them like this. I'm happy with what we've got here, so we can move on. It's time to rename the columns, and to do that, you can double click a column name and then change it. For example, I want this one to be called Reviewer Name, and then hit enter. You can also click on a column and rename with this button. So in this case, I want to call this Country Code. So I'm going to go and rename all the columns to suit what's inside the column. I'll use the double click method to make it faster. And now we've done renaming the columns we want to keep, there's actually a lot of columns that we don't want to keep. So from column 10 onwards, I want to get rid of all of these columns. So I've clicked on column 10, I can hold shift and right arrow to select all the ones to the right. And now I'll right click on the column and click on remove columns. So now we're left with exactly the columns we want. But this review count column isn't where I want it to be. Let's first move it all the way to the beginning. And now I'll click and drag it just after review name. So that way we can see the reviewer's name and how many reviews they have on the platform. So looking down here in Applied Steps, I'm going to point out that there's 2 reordered columns, and I want to change these so that they're easier to refer to later. I'll right click on this one and I'll rename it. And I'm going to change this to Move Index because that was when we moved the index column to the beginning. And this one, I'll right click on it and rename this one. So that one is when we moved the review count. That way it's easy to understand what we've done at each step. This brings us to a very good place because we're now ready to load this query into a table. So to go to the Home tab and then click on this drop down for Close and Load. We're going to close and load to. And then we want to select, as it says import data, select how you want to view this data in your workbook. I'm going to choose a table. You could choose a pivot table report or a pivot chart or just create a connection. I like the table, so we're going to put that into an existing worksheet, which happens to be this one here in cell B8. And then I'm going to click on OK. Now you'll see it's getting the data and it's created the table. But to be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of this table style. Let's change it. Head up to Table Styles. I'll click on this one because I like this one better. Next, I think the review title is a bit too wide. That column could be narrower. So let's make it narrower. Then I can't read all these texts. So I'm going to select the table from that first cell and hold Control Shift right arrow and down arrow. Then I'm going to go click on Home, choose this Wrap Text option. And that makes it easy to see the text. But I don't like all this text on the left down here. So I'm going to move it to the middle. And that's better, except I also want to center align different columns, like this index column. So I'll press Control Shift down arrow and click on center, and do the same for review count, country code, and review date. Press Control Shift down and click on center align. And then I think on the right, if I use the right arrow, these two date columns, date of experience and date reply, I'll shift right arrow to select, and then Control Shift down arrow to select down, and then click on center align. And now we have this table in Excel, and we can update it at any time by going to this query tab here. This is a tool tab that's just for queries. Then we can refresh the query by clicking on this button. So as long as we're connected to the internet, this table will bring in the latest information from the source. But I noticed that not all of the reviewer names are formatted with the correct capitalization, and I don't want the word reviews to appear in the rows of the column for review count. I just want the review count to be shown as a whole number. What can we do to fix these issues? In level 3, we're going to make some simple text changes, but before we can do that, I need to copy the previous level into level 3. I'm going to go to level 2, click on the top left corner of the table, press Ctrl and Shift and right arrow and down arrow to select. Then I'll press Ctrl C to copy, head back to level 3, and right click here. What I want to do is paste special, so I'll hover over this arrow, and it gives me this option, which is to keep the source column widths. Next, I'm going to go up to the table design and click on properties, because I don't want it to adjust column width every time it refreshes. Otherwise, it might change the column widths from what I have already. So I'll click OK, and got the new table. We also have a new query. So it's copied level 2's query, and we want to rename that. So I can right click on this and then click on rename. So I'll change this to level 3. Ooh, but I just noticed that the wrap text feature didn't work. Although it's copied over into this table, it looks like the rows aren't auto-fitting. So let me select the rows here on the left, and then I'm going to double click on that line between those rows 9 and 10. And now auto-fit works. Let's head to the Queries and Connections pane on the right and right click on the level 3. Then we'll edit it. So the first thing we'll fix is this reviewer name column. I'm going to click it to select it. Then we'll go to Transform, and in the section called Text Column, we shall apply some formatting. So this drop down lets us capitalize each word, which is what I want to do. So now you see it's fixed those names which didn't have the correct capitalization. Next, I want to review the review column. So the number of reviews shouldn't include the word reviews. We'll fix that by going to the text column again and clicking on Extract. We want to choose text before delimiter. And the delimiter we want to specify is space R, because that's the start of the word review. We also want to get rid of the space. So I'll click on OK. And now that leaves us with the number in the review count column, but it's not actually a number yet. You see this little ABC at the top. If I click on that, you see that it gives us options for what to present this as. At the moment, that ABC means it's text. So although it looks like a number to us, I click off, that looks like a number to you and me, but Power Query is treating that as text. We don't want that as text. We want that as actually numbers. So I'm going to click on that and change the type from text to a whole number here. That's better. And now we can go to the Home button and click on this button to close and load. And that's updated the reviewer names. So you see this name was not properly capitalized before. It is now. And it's also got rid of the review word. So this number here is actually the number 3. And it's not text that says 3 reviews. Cool. We fixed the issue in the first 2 columns. But now I see that there are these 2-letter country codes instead of the full country names. And I'm not sure what they mean. So I'd like to add the country names in full. Of course, I don't want to add them manually each time I look up a new one. So how do we get Power Query to do this for us automatically? In level 4, we'll add country names as a column to the right of these 2-letter country codes in this column. And you can see that I've already copied the level 3 table and the query into this level 4 sheet. And I use the same steps as I did at the start of level 3 to copy the level 2 table into the level 3 sheet. I found out that the 2-letter country codes come from the ISO 3166 standard, and there are websites with the country codes on them. So this first website works fine because it lists all the countries with the Alpha 2 2-letter codes. But I'm going to use this second website, which lists the countries and the Alpha 2 codes, but it also lists some of the country names with extra words in brackets, like this and like this. So I'm going to choose this website because I want to show you how to get rid of those extra words in brackets using Power Query. So I'm going to press Ctrl L and Ctrl C to copy that link, and we'll head back to Excel. We have to create a new query for the country code so we can use it to look up the country names in this level 4 table. And we'll do it by something called a merge. So first, head up to data and then click on Get Data from Web. Now we've got the URL box. We'll paste the link that we copied and click OK. I'm going to select table 1. This is the correct data, so we can click on Transform Data. Let's first change the name of the query. So instead of table 1, I'm going to call it country codes. And then I'll rename some of these columns. So the first one, double click and change it to country. Hit enter. Now I want to split this column using this drop down. We'll select by delimiter, and the delimiter we want is custom, and enter in this box the left bracket because we want to exclude everything from that left bracket onwards. So now we need to split at the leftmost occurrence of that delimiter, and then we'll click OK. So that's split into country.1 and country.2. So you see down here where there was a the for the Bahamas, now it just lists Bahamas and it's got rid of the here. We'll need to trim this column because there's some extra spaces. So we'll go into Transform and Format and then click on Trim. And we can get rid of this column by right-clicking and clicking on Remove. I'm going to drag this Alpha 2 code column to the left so we can then use it as a lookup. Now it's time to do the merge. Click on the level 4 table, go up to the Home tab, and then click on Merge Queries. There are actually 2 options, but we want the first one. So the Merge dialog box asks us to select a table and matching columns to create a merged table. We need to select the country codes table, and we're going to select the country code up in level 4, plus the Alpha 2 code in the country codes table. And we want to do a left outer join, and it's telling us the selection matches 11 of the 11 rows from the first table. So that's all good, and we can click OK. What this has done is added a column called country codes to the level 4 table. We need to expand the column by clicking here, and we just want to keep the country and click OK. You can see this has created the lookup of countries, but it's also put it right at the end on the right-hand side of the table. So I'm going to go and move this by going to the Transform tab, clicking on the Move drop-down and selecting to Beginning. And I can now drag that column to the right here, so it's right next to the country code. Then I'll rename this by double-clicking, changing it to country, hitting enter. And we can go back to the Home and close and load. You can see that it's loading level 4 and also loading country codes. It seems to have had a problem with country codes, so I'm just going to click refresh. Okay, that's better. Now we'll check level 4. And what we'll need to do is click on index to sort smallest to largest, which is why we have that index column. And we want to format this new country field. So I'll press Control Shift and down arrow to select the whole range. And I'll go to the Home button and choose to middle align it. Then I'll change some of the column headings, auto fit. Let's reduce this one as well. And now we have an updated table that has the country code and the country name. So it's great that we figured out how to add country names, but scrolling over, I can see that the date columns don't look right. There's extra text in the columns for experience date and reply date. How do we get rid of the extra text so we just leave the date values? In level 5, we're going to figure out how to remove the text from these two date columns so they can turn into actual dates that we can use in calculations. So I've copied the table from level 4 into the sheet for level 5. I've renamed this query as the level 5 query. So now what we can do is right-click on it and edit it. That brings up the Power Query editor with the level 5 table selected. Let's sort this index column because it's not in the right order. I'm going to choose sort ascending, and now we'll move to the right. And here are the two date columns we want to modify. Select the first one, date of experience. Now you'll see that's the text we want to get rid of. Let's click on one of these cells. I'm going to actually select it down here and press Ctrl C to copy and go back and select the whole column. Then I can click on replace values. So the value to find, I just Ctrl V to paste. I want to replace it with nothing. So I click on OK, and you'll see that gets rid of the words date of experience, but it leaves this as text. So you can see the data type up here in the top left. So what we need to do is click that and change it to a date. And now that's done. Let's move to the reply date. So I'll click on that column. Most of the dates are fine except for this one, which has updated. So I'm going to click on that, and I can select, including the space, this updated with the space, and Ctrl C to copy it. Then I select the whole column and click on replace values because we want to find wherever it says updated with the space. We want to replace it with nothing, so don't add anything here, and then click on OK. So that's got rid of the updated, but it's still leaving this as text. So remember, you've got to click here and change it to a date data type. Now we can close and load, and we can see that the date columns are now correct. So now you know how to get data from the web, but do you know that Power Query can do so much more to help you get the business data that you need? You can import CSV files, merge data from many different Excel files into a single table, get data from PDFs, and even connect to SAP, Azure, and Oracle. To learn how to do this and much more, check out my recommended resource in the description below. And if you want to learn a powerful way to not have to manually do so many repetitive tasks in Excel, check out this video next.